Okay, so if you accidentally generate the UV maps and you didn't mean to do that and you forgot to hit that checkbox, you don't have to go all the way back. You can click here if you didn't spot it already and just uncheck that. Uh, Go ahead and hit apply, and that recompute normals will smooth everything out. It didn't really show it on this one. I'm not quite sure the reasoning for that, but usually you're going to notice the shading and some other stuff just looks a little weird. Once you do that, it should make it look like flat white and all that, so it actually looks correct. If you click the UV button, you'll notice we have a little bit of an error and a little bit of an issue. This is the UV map for this middle one right here. This is the UV map, if you remember right, for this one. And then this one over here has this UV map. Now when it goes to do the shading, it's going to try to bake the lighting and it's going to try to cast the shadows, but there's overlapping. So you're going to get a UVs are overlapping by X percentage. It's going to vary depending on how much. If you simply unwrap them all, and they all had this little shape right here, the 4 stacked, and we just left them like that and we cut them all the same way, it's going to say probably 99.9 or most of the percentage. Not an error message you want. The way we fix that, there's 2 different ways. One is we can sit here and we can tweak this and we can work with it until the grid looks exactly the same size and everything's the same and all of these cubes are the same, and we can just unwrap them individually and move them around like I kind of did. Alternatively, and this is probably the better approach, or at least in my opinion it's the better approach, you can hit shift, click all of the cubes, specifically the ones you want to import together that have the same UV. You can join them together. So if I just do this, and again, there's two ways, 2 subgroups to this method. One is to join all of them together and then import them. The other one is to just go ahead and join certain parts and pieces and then go ahead. So let's say this was a round cylinder, and I'm going to do this a little later on and show you how that works. Let's say this was a round cylinder and it had a lot of faces, or a sphere or something, and it had a lot of faces. Therefore, it had a lot of UV mapping. You may want to go ahead and import this by itself, and then these 2 under the selected objects. So anyway, let's just go ahead and we're going to join all of these. Shift click all of them, go to Tools, and click Join. You can also hit space and hit Join. Again, we don't want the material, so I'm going to go ahead for now, come over here, and I'm just going to hit the minus sign. I don't really want the material. I don't have any need for it. I'm going to work with all that in Unreal, and I'm going to assign one. Again, it's not really going to import the material in a way that looks good or is probably going to even look anywhere near right. If you'll notice, this cube has no open faces anywhere on it. Therefore, we don't actually see this face, right? Let's see here, go to face edit mode. Right here, if we go into edit and we look at it, we're not going to see this face. So one thing you want to keep in mind as you're working through the UV mapping, and I think I talked a little bit of this on some of my other basic videos, but in case you missed that or just want a refresher, you can hit delete and then hit faces if you're in face mode. It's about the best way I know to do it. And that right there will get rid of all of the those faces, so now you can't see them. Again, you don't need to UV map them. It's going to spread the lighting out a little bit better, do the layout just a smidge better. Go ahead and hit Tab, select all, and now you'll notice it's plopped all of the UV maps on top of one another. So now we can actually see it. And again, you can come over here and you can just go ahead and edit this and scale them all and try to get them all the same size. I find that's just a little too tedious and a little too much work unless you just really need to get into the nitty-gritty of it. So what I like to do is just hit U and do a Smart Project U unwrap. I tend to, because Unreal likes to have a little bit of space between them, assign about a 0.1 island margin and then hit OK. Just puts a little bit of space. And if you look at any of the Unreal meshes that are already in there and go into edit, you'll notice that they all have a little bit of space. It just seems to help with the baking. There may be cases where you don't want to do that, like the stop sign I'm probably going to do. You're probably not going to want that. You want them just kind of right next to or sharing the same line. But this is just a good common practice. Again, feel free to look through the static meshes that Unreal has made themselves and put out there. There are some in the Leandry folder. We're just going to go ahead and I'll pull one up real quick so you can see it, just to give you an example. Let's see here. I've been using a lot of the materials from that. There we go, Leandry. Go under meshes, and then there's a whole bunch in here, but if I go to edit, and I don't know, hopefully this is a good example. There you go. You can kind of get the idea how stuff's just kind of spaced out and how it is, and this looks real smooshed. It's going to bake the lighting okay, and it's going to work. You'll also notice there's a second UV channel for some of the other pieces. It is possible to add a second UV channel. I'm trying to figure out how to do that. I don't know how to do that yet. That is another option you can go for. Right now, your best option is just to kind of follow along with this. I think Maya is about the only one that can do that. Blender may have an option. I'm trying to figure that out. If there is a way, I'll let you know, and I will post an update to that. There we go. You see again, you can see how everything's just got a little bit of space. Some stuff does share the same edge, but for the most part, it's got a little bit of space on a lot of it. And that just has to do with a lot of the texture wrapping, in this case, that material that it's applied that they made up for it. So anyway, that kind of gives you a basic idea of how that part's going to work. So now if you go ahead and you export this and import it and go ahead and build it, and if you want to pause the video and go through those steps, I'm not really going to go ahead and do that because it takes about 20 or 30, probably about 10 to 20 minutes for me to actually build the level, even though it's not getting that complex yet. So I would just go ahead again. If you want, export and import it. You'll see how the lighting works and how the grid's going to set on there a little bit better and how it now looks correct. Okay, so if you're just coming back from doing all of that, what I want to do next is I want to show you how you can get something just a little too complex. Just go ahead and select all of these faces for this middle cube and just delete those faces. Okay. If you just want to go ahead and do that, it's not really going to hurt. Actually, you know what? Don't do it. Don't add the faces back to this inside. It's not going to help us for what we're about to do. Go out of edit mode. Don't drop it in on edit mode. Drop in we're going to go cylinder. Just drop a cylinder. Good old-fashioned cylinder. 1 by 3.5 by 2. There we go. Oh, actually, sorry. Drop in the cylinder, and we're going to increase the number of vertices. Go ahead and put 128. We're going to want something that looks really, really, really round. Oh, not that big. There we go. This is probably not that super critical, but I can't help it. I'm getting a little control freak over here. Okay, so that's good enough. Just kind of eyeball it in there. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so now we have this really complex with all these different faces. Let's say for some reason we just needed to have something that was that smooth and we wanted it to be that complex. If I go ahead and I hit space, I'm just going to mark everything as a seam and unwrap it. Go ahead and use that smart unwrap again and hit OK. You'll notice how small this is. If I add these two pieces into it, it's going to simply have no room to put it on there. It is not going to look right. It's not going to come out quite right. Not what we want, not how we want it to look. So in this case, in this instance, what you're going to have to do, export FBX. In this case, I'm going to call it UV Tutorial A, and that has the cubes on it. We're going to do selected objects and export. Okay, so we're going to select the cylinder now. We're going to hit export FBX. We're going to go B, selected objects again, and export. Okay. Nope. Okay, I'm not sure what that was all about. Export.